Good evening, everyone. This is Russell Farbiarz with Antonavich Farbiarz. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in live to our special Facebook Live event this evening. I am really excited to have with us uh, not one, but two special guests. First, I have Jason Hornberger, a commercial lender from Orrstown Bank, as well as Jim Gavin, who we will speak with in a little moment in a few moments. And Jim is an attorney with the law firm of Masano Bradley in Wyomissing. Uh, I'm Russell Farbiarz from Antonavich Farbiarz. Antonavich Farbiarz is a firm based in Hamburg and with an office in Wyomissing. We do focus our practice on estate planning and estate administration. And so I'm really excited tonight because we're going to get to talk with Jason in a few minutes about his experiences as a live organ donor, and then Jim's going to share his experiences as a family member of a organ donation recipient. I think that everyone is going to have a lot of interesting things uh, to share with our audience. Uh, so in a moment, we'll have Jason Hornberger start telling his story. Jason is a commercial mortgage originator or lender with Orrstown Bank. He is the market lead in Berks County, uh, and I couldn't be happier to introduce him. Not only is he excellent at his job, but he's also a great friend of mine and of Antonavich Farbiar's. So without further ado, Jason, welcome.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Russell.
That's one. I really appreciate you taking out the time here today. Uh, I've I've seen you post, and I've seen you talk, and I know you were on I think ABC News a couple months back talking about your experiences with organ donation. Now you were you were a live donor, but can you tell us, are there other ways to be an organ donor other than being a live donor?
Yeah. So I'm a unique case. I was actually the first person ever at the University of Penn to be a living donor twice. That being in 2016, I donated my liver, and then again a couple months ago, back in March, I donated kidney. And yes, that sounds crazier than it is. We'll talk about it here more today. But obviously, the best way to be an organ donor is to let it known to your family. Number one, that's something that's important to you, that you get to leave. It's as easy as putting on your driver's license. It doesn't cost anything to you. But at the end of all of it, what you put on your driver's license doesn't really matter. It's more so what your family knows your wishes are. Overall, I had a lot of reasons for becoming a live donor, but the biggest one, I got to help a friend in need. I got to be the type of person I want my family to think of me as leaving a legacy. And selfishly, my wife's mother was an organ donor. She passed when my wife was only 11. So I never met my mother-in-law. So in a weird way, I got to suck up to my mother-in-law and honor her by doing this. But yeah, it really just at the core of it, you get to do something good for somebody else. And whether that's in life or after you die, it's a great thing to do, and you can leave a great legacy that way.
All right, so Jason, you touched on some important themes there. So one of the things that you mentioned, you can be an organ donor both, uh, but obviously both while you're alive, and we'll talk about that process in a few moments. But you can also be, I guess, what's termed a post-mortem donor. So you can, but what you said there is, it seems that it's really important to make a plan to be an organ donor and to let your family know. Uh, Other than putting on your driver's license, are there other ways that you would suggest?
Yeah, there's different ways with your will, your living documents. There's all sorts of ways to communicate that, but it's really at, well, especially for I know through my mother-in-law and hearing those stories of how the family was all in a very difficult position. People had different opinions. but Tammy Schaefer, my mother-in-law, she was in the medical field, and she let it be known this is what she wanted, and her husband made that decision, and it's something that the family really cherishes and knows that she got to. I might get this number wrong. I think it was 4 families. She got to really let loved ones continue to live with the different parts that she was able to donate.
Okay. Well, that's just amazing. And she's really sounds. I know that you didn't get a chance to meet her, but she sounds like she was quite a wonderful person uh, to do that and to inspire you. So let's talk a little bit about what happened. How did you become an organ donor?
So I think it was the summer of 2016. A friend of mine, a friend of the community, Dick Henry, the realtor and auctioneer. I think everybody in the county has probably come across Dick at some point in time through charitable work or professional work. He's really been everywhere. But overall, he's been a longtime family friend of me through my father, and I've known Dick since I was an infant. So he had been battling a disease called NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. So his liver was failing, and he kept it really private for a long time. So for about a year leading up to that, people could see him losing weight, his color changing in his skin, and eventually he let his coworkers, who kept pushing and pushing him, to allow a search to happen for a donor. And amazingly, once they went out, put a Facebook page, an email thread came around. They put up a website, and I happened to get the email with it. My father did the same day. My wife saw it. I came home from work with just this feeling that it was meant to be me. I was in good health. I was 29 at the time. Didn't take any medication. I had a job where the medical benefits lined up that I would be able to take effectively as much time as I needed. And my family situation was really unique. My parents literally had just moved into my basement. They had retired and uh, wanted to downsize. So they were there to help me through recovery. So I thought this all added up to something that made sense, that I could do this. And also, I was uniquely educated by going to the Gift of Life events, which is the big charity about organ donation. I've gone to lots of events with my wife, so I knew a lot about organ donation. So after getting educated and learning about it, I felt good about putting in an application. But I got home that day from work, and my wife was already filling out an application, and so was my father. And I guess when I talked to Penn a couple weeks later, I'd reached out to see if they had received my application, and apparently about 60 people had applied to try to help Dick, which is just an amazing number that so many people wanted to reach out and help him. So went through about, I guess it'd be about a 6-month process of testing physically to make sure I was a match, my blood type, the shape of my liver, actually, to make sure it was the same size and it would fit in the cavity. And even just not to get too far ahead, I'm sure taking out my whole liver, that you don't get to donate your whole liver. There's 2 lobes of it. So they took out the larger lobe, which was about 75% of the whole thing. That's what I gave to Dick, and both lobes grew back to whatever they needed to be. So overall, I went through all the testing, physical, psychological. They wanted to make sure I could handle having a scar on my belly, that I wouldn't have any body issues, that I professionally had the ability to take the time to recover, and that I had the support at home, which uniquely, having my parents there to help was a huge deal. And my wife is amazing in everything that she does, but she managed to handle having my daughter was 1 at the time, actually. And she managed to be taking care of my daughter and me as I recovered. So having that support network was big as I got tested to figure out if I was the right donor or not.
So can you talk a little bit about the testing that you had to undergo to even qualify to be a live donor?
Yeah, I mentioned a little bit there, but physically that makes sense, that they have to just make sure that it's going to fit inside the recipient's body. There's a chance that it wouldn't. I had to be the right blood type. But what was really interesting was that they continued to have me go back and make sure that I could handle it mentally. That have, like I mentioned, having a scar on my stomach, if I even to make sure I was doing it for the right reasons. Of organ donation, actually, in the United States, you're not allowed to be compensated for donating an organ. So they had to make sure financially I was doing it for the right reasons. I that I was coming from the right background. Um, so it was a really interesting process where they really focused on making sure more than just physically was I able to handle this emotionally and personally.
Okay.
They also did ask about whether I had a will in place, directives, which thankfully my wife and I had put together before my daughter was born, with having financial power of attorney, medical power of attorney, and all those things were already in place.
Um, that, thank you. So I imagine you were out of work for a little bit and in the hospital. So was this really disruptive for your life, or?
Overall, it was a little bit of a disruption, but isn't every sacrifice is, whether it's your time, talent, or treasure. So I went in with the right expectations. The doctors told me I would do better if I lost a little bit of weight. So I lost, I think it was like 15 or 20 pounds before the first surgery. And I came out and I interviewed a bunch of people who had been living donors before and asked the doctors everything what would help me have the best outcome. And everybody just said, just drink lots of water and go for walks. So I had a really good recovery. I woke up after surgery. The University of Pennsylvania was amazing with giving me pain medication for what I need. They continue to change and alter it to whatever was appropriate. And I was out of the hospital in only a couple days, actually, and was back home. Yeah, it hurt, but so does you look at, yeah, some of the leaders in our community who take the time to lead capital campaigns or anything else. They're sacrificing time, money. It's just all different ways of doing the same thing, of helping other people by making a sacrifice. Mine just happened to be absorb a little bit of pain, take a few days off. I was at the hospital a couple days. I think I had 5 weeks off the first time around from work, and then I went back to work just because I was paid the whole time for it. And with the kidney here recently, I went home. I was actually in the hospital only one night. I was there the day of surgery. I stayed overnight and I went home the next day, which was a very unique, fast surgery turnaround time. And I worked a couple days later and I'll say I was 100% actually from all of surgery in about a month.
Okay. Do you have any tips for anyone if they are thinking about being a live donor, how they can make sure that they have the same result as you?
Yeah, excuse me. I, when I was talking to the doctors and went through the process, when they're trying to make sure I was physically able to do it, they asked me, yeah, to lose a little bit of weight, be as in good of condition as you can. So that's number one, of just listen to the doctors, do your research. They acted like it was amazing that I was 29 and 33 the last time around, that I don't take any daily medication. If you can be healthy enough to not take any medication, I think that qualifies you as a really good donor. They were weirdly impressed that I didn't take any medications other than vitamins. Um, so as long as you do that, you're mentally prepared, you do your research, talk to other living donors, ask the questions of the doctors. I think my favorite part when I went through the process for the liver, or my surgeon was Kim Altoff. It was just a world-renowned surgeon. I asked her, well, what are your stats? How many surgeries have you done? And she just sat back like, thousands. The folks that are really good at this stuff but know what they're doing, and you put your hands in a professional like that, they'll do their part of, if you just do yours, of waking up, walking as much as you can. It's a weird thing how walking helps fix your body, whatever the problem is. So I still do that. I'll go out for walks just if I'm not feeling well, and it just fixes your body, your mind, and that's my best advice. If you're going to go through it, get educated, and then get up as soon as you can and start walking.
Wow. Um, do you have any long-term effects from being a live organ donor?
So there's a the I'll say I had more considerations with the kidney than I did for the liver. With the liver, they took the 70% piece out, my 30% piece completely regrew back to the size that it needed to be. I have no long-term sacrifice from that. It really doesn't impact me in any way. I can drink, I can run, or I can really do anything other than having I have a nice L-shaped scar on my stomach. That's that. So really no repercussion from that. With the kidney, I had to think about it more. We're born with two kidneys, and when you give away one, that means I only have one left. So if I have some reason that my kidney weren't to work anymore, I'd have to seek a donor to replace that. So just getting educated beforehand, I thought through all my considerations with it, and I found out that if my kidney were to ever go, I moved to the top of the list in terms of being able to get a transplant. So obviously, if my kidneys goes, it's all I have. I don't have any backup, so I would go to the top of the list. But they have it separated out more so specifically that organ donors go to the top. So kind of solve that problem. But I also thought too that if a family member, if somebody else needed a kidney, I don't have any more spares that I could be a donor again. This is my last run in organ donation. I don't really have anything left to give. But I hope with telling my story, with letting it known that this thing is actually relatively easy. You're just absorbing a little bit of pain for a couple days, maybe a week or two. A little bit of discomfort for a month, depending on what surgery you do. I think it's possible. It's wonderful and awesome. You save somebody's life. If I can inspire somebody, I would hope if something were to happen to one of my kids, that somebody would step up and help, and I could help them through that process, and hopefully help a lot of other people too along the way.
I think that's a good segue to sort of bring Jim into the conversation here a little bit. Um, how, how are you doing tonight, Jim?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Wonderful. So as I mentioned before, Jim is an attorney at the law firm of Mazzano Bradley in Wyomissing. And my family's known Jim for a long time, but Jim has some personal experience with a donor being a family member of an organ donation recipient. So Jim, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience?
I do, but before I do, I want to talk about Jason for a minute. Jason and I met a number of years ago now, in a charitable context. And as anybody who's involved in a board of directors on a nonprofit or any type of charitable thing, they'll often say, part of your job is to give your time, your talent, and your treasure. In other words, give some of your time, give your skill, and give a little bit of your money. That list does not include give your organs. Okay.
I have different talents than other people, Jim.
Yeah, true. But the point I want to make is Jason is a very, very good banker, but he is a substantially better man. And my observation tonight is that he's being fairly humble in what he has done, and what he has done is save two people's lives without question. So my story is kind of coincidental that we're doing this today, because today is my second daughter Molly's birthday. And this story involves her, and more particularly her husband. Molly and her husband, who is 27, 28 years old, got married last August. They have not reached their first wedding anniversary yet. And It was a late January. My son-in-law Dale got sick. We were originally told it was his gallbladder, and his gallbladder was removed, and we were expecting that he was going to be released from the hospital within a day or so, and he wasn't. Didn't know what was going on, and then finally in mid-February, my wife and I received a call from my daughter one night in which she said that Dale had been told that day that he was dying. He was dying of congestive heart failure, that he had 1 year to live unless he got a heart transplant. The thing about that night that I remember the most is I said to my daughter, "How's Dale doing?" And my daughter is a tough cookie and very direct. And she said, "How would you be if you were just told you were going to die?" And I said, "Well, okay, fair." I said, "How are you?" She said, "How would you be if you were just told that your husband was about to die?" And I was looking at a situation that my daughter, who was not married 1 year, was not 30 years old, was looking at being a widow. The following month was miserable, was absolutely miserable. Every day was worse than the day before. You don't even go immediately on the transplant list. You have to go through all of these protocols. You have to pass all of these things. One of the things that you have to do is they have to examine you from head to toe to make sure that your body is ready for the transplant. Because if it's not, they're not going to do it. So, for example, although he had absolutely no problem with his wisdom teeth, they did emergency wisdom tooth surgery and pulled out his wisdom teeth because they could not afford for him to get a transplant and all of a sudden get an infection. Finally, it was mid-March. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and we received a phone call. And the phone call was simply, "There's a heart available. You need to get here." And here was in Pittsburgh. As I was approaching, not knowing when that phone call was coming, one of the things that I was keenly aware of was the fact that in order for my son-in-law to live, somebody needed to die. Because, much in the way that Jason can't give away his other kidney right now, people don't give away hearts. You only get a heart if somebody died. So as my wife and I headed out to Pittsburgh that morning, that afternoon, not a lot of talking going on in the car. We're just thinking. And I started to think, obviously I was concerned about my son-in-law. I was concerned about my daughter, but I really thought about the donor. And honestly, I didn't know that day. I still don't know. I don't know whether the donor was male or female. I don't know how old the donor was. I don't know where the donor was from. I don't know whether he liked sports or music. I don't know what his favorite color was. What I know, I think, and I hope, that he had a family and his family really cared about him and he cared for his family. And I know that he had a heart, and that heart was strong, and that heart was wonderful. So regardless of how he passed, the heart was good. So he ends up that day, after a very long surgery, getting a heart transplant. They keep you in the operating room for some time after the heart is in to monitor you and see how you're doing. And Dale's mother is a nurse, and during the course of the treatment, he was only allowed one visitor at a time. It was either my daughter or his mother. They were never in the room together except for that day. And she came out of the hospital afterwards and she told me that whenever she visited him, she would look at his heart monitors and she knew how bad he was. And but when he came back to the room that night before they left, she looked at the heart monitors and they looked better. And the next day, it just was those little things. You're just waiting for him to wake up. And he woke up and they got him out of bed and they walked him. And within a few days, they had him in a step down unit. Within 2 weeks, he was released from the hospital. Within a couple of weeks after that, he was given permission to drive. Shortly after that, he was given permission to go back to work. Ironically, he worked in the very hospital where he had his surgery as a EKG tech. And on his very first day back to work, as he's leaving work, a man entering the hospital goes into a seizure and falls to the ground. And Dale was over there and knew all the things to do for somebody that was having a seizure and effectively saved his life. So it led me to believe that whoever that person was, who I refer to as the person I don't know, he saved my son-in-law's life, so my son-in-law could save somebody else's life. So when I heard Jason's story, I think I saw it on Facebook, and I knew Jason. I felt compelled to write Jason a note, and it was just my thank you note. Jason was my surrogate thank you. He was my guy that I was expressing all of my feelings to for this person that I don't know that saved my son-in-law's life. So obviously I'm talking about a post-mortem transplant, and yeah, all I can say is to anybody that hasn't put it on their driver's license, put it on your driver's license. Understand that the very last act you will have on earth, the very, very last thing you do is going to save somebody's life. And I saw Dale just this past weekend. And the best way I can describe it is if you imagine a car where the battery just isn't working well and the car's thumping along, and you pop that old battery out and you put a new battery in, the car just runs great. And that's what I'm seeing. And, you know, I went from a situation where my daughter was going to lose her husband within a year of marriage to a young lady and a young gentleman who absolutely demonstrated their love for each other during that very, very difficult time. And I'm very, very confident they're going to have a long life together because somebody made a decision to put that on his driver's license.
Thank you, Jim, for sharing your story. So
And even to add to Jim's story of, I was initially nervous. I had been a living donor once, and to do it again, I didn't want it for attention. I didn't want to do it for any other reason than, you know, like the same things that the first time around of honor my mother-in-law, be the person I want to be for my kids, and help a friend. But I went to go see one of my mentors who I actually saw tonight too. And I told him this story of how Jim and I are connected, that I went in to see my mentor. This was right before surgery, actually 2 weeks before surgery. And he was the only person I told before surgery that I was going to do it. I had kept it quiet to everybody else. And he told me I can't keep it to myself. I had to tell other people. It's going to create value. It's going to inspire people. You don't know how much good it is to put good news out in the world. And I was skeptical of it. I just didn't need the attention. And he really pushed me to make sure I told the story as often and as many times as possible. And I was still skeptical to that after surgery until Jim saw my story, and I got that beautifully penned letter in the mail that it gave him solace. It did something. It created value for him, and I start to tear up thinking about it. I created value that I didn't know I even could. So it was absolutely worth telling my story. And as much as we can inspire, it's an amazing thing. So
yeah, if I can, Russ, I completely agree with Jason on that. I mean, at my core, I'm actually a very, very private person. And I'm not the type of person that's inclined to share this. But I'm much in the same way. felt an incredible urge to share this. I'm on Facebook, but I virtually don't post anything at all. But the day after my son-in-law's surgery, I absolutely needed to get this out. And it had as much to do with my son-in-law as it did to do with the family of the donor. Because there, again, I understood that there was somebody out there that was going through tremendous trauma that day because they lost a family member. And one of the things for the postmortem transplants that's interesting is the hospital does not give the recipient any information about who the donor is until about a year after the donation, and they will give the family the opportunity to submit a letter to the hospital that the hospital will review and determine whether they pass it on to the donor's family. And if they pass it on to the donor's family, then it's up to the donor's family to see whether they want to speak to the donor. And I know my daughter and son-in-law intend to reach out, and if the family doesn't want to speak to them, so be it. But they'll know that again, their child's loss was life for somebody else.
Completely agree, and it's very inspiring. Jason, I'll share with you that I saw. Uh, I knew you had donated to Dick, um, whatever, several years ago for your liver, but I didn't know that you were donating to him again. And I saw some posts on Facebook. It was either I don't recall if it was you or if it was your wife Amanda who posted, and I just thought how amazing that this man did this not just once but twice, and it just has such a profound impact on a family. And we should all be so lucky to have more Jason Hornbergers in the world, uh, to to truly give back to this community. Uh, Now, Jim, I'll ask you this question, but if you don't feel comfortable answering it, you don't have to. But if you could speak with that donor's family, what would you say?
Um, Great question. I honestly haven't thought about it. Um, Beyond thank you, and if there's anything I can ever do for you, please tell me. Um, I don't know yet, and I don't anticipate that I will be in that position. I think my daughter and son-in-law may. Um, if I have the opportunity to, I may write them a letter, and I don't know what I would say until I actually sat down and wrote it. But I'm reasonably confident that I would write something that would um, express the gratitude of myself, my wife, my other two daughters, um, and Dale and Molly. Because again, it's surreal in the way that the line between life and death is incredibly thin. But what I learned from this experience is the line between death and life is equally thin. And this was a young man who was literally dying that is now living and looks like he's going to live for a long time. And, we have so many differences in between people in the world today that we ignore the fact that we have so much in common. And this is just an example that we can save lives and have the last thing we do on earth being a life, saving somebody's life just by checking a box that says organ donor in your driver's license.
You're so right, Jim, that it's a pretty simple way to really express your humanity as a both as a live donor and as a post-mortem donor. Now, there are we talked a little bit earlier about how you would become an organ donor. I think the most important thing that Jason mentioned is talk to your family. You know, I have found in my practice, I think it's the most important thing that you can do with estate planning is just make a plan, and that plan involves communicating with your family, and then you can also you want to put it on your driver's license, but as Jason alluded to, you also can include it in your living will documents so that it is written and it's in a legal document so that your family knows what your wishes are. Um, Jason, are there any organizations out there that you're aware of that's bring to life or 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 can help people who are interested in being an organ donor?
Yeah, that absolutely. Thanks, Russell. I originally got my education about organ donation through my wife, and she actually organized walks for a number of years through Gift of Life, where there's a lot of information you can learn about organ donation, what the statistics are. It's actually kind of amazing that actually myself as an organ donor, I am more likely to live longer than the general population. Kind of crazy, but I went into surgery healthy. I'm coming out healthy is the mindset. But overall, it's a great organization. You can get lots of information from them about it. And one of their other drives and missions is to really help donor families and support them along the way too. So part of our process, my wife stayed at the Gift of Life Family House, which is down the street from the hospital, and she stayed there during the night of surgery actually for me, so she was not far away. So there's all sorts of great information, advocacy that they do, and that's both for post-mortem cadaver donors, whatever the term is, and for living donors as well. They have all sorts of ways of advocacy. So definitely look them up. Gift of Life.
I think we just dropped into the comments a website. So if you're looking for more information on Gift of Life, it's giftoflife.org. But it's definitely worth checking out. And I see that Jason's wife just put in donors1.org as well.
That that's the local chapter, which is very strong and does a lot of great events. I've actually become a trained speaker as well for the organization, and there's a lot of good that can be done by just getting people educated and dispelling a lot of those myths that have no merit.
Well, thank you, Jason. You truly have an inspiring story, and you're a inspiring person. I'm really thankful that you are in this community, and I'm also appreciate that you have come on here tonight, talk with us. Before I close things out, do you have either of you have anything else you want to share with our audience?
I'm going to say no, thank you. I appreciate the
Yeah.
time, and I'm so glad that you and Jason got together to do this, and then graciously allowed me to jump on at the end.
Oh, thank you, Jim.
Yep.
It's always a pleasure to have you involved in anything we do, but certainly really it gives us a unique perspective um, that you've lived through, and I'm true truly happy to know that Dale is doing better, doing well, and that he's going to live a long life with Molly, because they both deserve that.
Thank you.
And I just want to add, I'm amazed and still just so happy that what I did created value. And as much as Jim said, it's more than time, talent, and treasure. I think that's all it is. I made a sacrifice and it helped somebody else, in more ways than I realized. So just as you go out every day, that's my only parting thought is you can create a lot of value by giving a little bit of yourself, or whatever that is. It does not have to be organs, although it's a pretty cool thing when it
Yeah.
is. But yeah, we can all do a lot of good in this world, and yeah, to just know that it's inspiring, and it multiplies. It's more than you ever realize it can be when you just give a little bit of yourself.
Quite literally, Jason. But you know, and another way that, you know, if you're not ready for full on organ donation, another thing you can think about is giving blood, because there certainly is a blood shortage. There has been, particularly over the last, you know, year and a half with the COVID-19 pandemic. So that is another way that you can that people can help. But again, I think the important thing to think about here, at least, you know, tying it back to estate planning, is make sure you make a plan. Check out, we have some resources on our website, and I think we can put them back into the chat or into the comments again, on healthcare directives. Uh, those are always, it's always good to have that plan, and make sure that your intentions are known to your family, to your next of kin, so that the organ donation your organ donation can occur. Because Jason, if I'm right about this, even if it's on your license, the donor's family still would need to consent. So
At the in the moment, the doctor is always going to defer to the donor family, regardless of what's written on the license. So that when it's on the license, at least one way to communicate to your family, that you can go that one step further to say that it's important to you, which I think is a good conversation to have.
again, thank you, Jason, for being so inspiring, or sharing your inspiring story here. Uh, Again, Jason is, as Jim put it, an excellent banker with Orrstown Bank. He's a commercial lender, and Jim is an attorney at Masano Bradley in Wyomissing. Uh, Certainly, if you have uh, any estate planning needs or along those lines, you can always contact me at Antonavich Farbiarz, and our contact information is in the comments as well. We'd always be happy to have a conversation with you, making sure that organ donation is a part of your plan. Uh, I hope you'll stay tuned on our Facebook page over the next couple of months, on our YouTube channel. We have a seminar on Medicare that will be coming up probably in early September, and then we are doing a home buyers seminar that's going to be on September 29th at 7:00 p.m. And if there's ever a topic that you might be interested in, let us know. I'd always be happy to put something together. So, and thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you, of course, to Jason and Jim for joining me tonight for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.